Hi there, welcome to my tutorial on how to make a vector. As you can see over here, this is what we're going to be making inside the code. Alright, so without further ado, let's go to the vector class. And we're going to be making a couple changes. Firstly, we're going to be adding a position to the vector. And so that means every time we return a vector, we're also going to have to return the position inside it as well.
So over here, this dot position.
And we're going to be making a new method called rotate, and the parameter will be radians. I'm going to use a specific formula to rotate the vector, which is going to be as follows.
Minus this dot y.
And we're just going to return a new vector that has these new x and y values as well as this dot position. Okay, so now let's create a new fractal class. Class fractal. We're going to export it as the default for this module. And so we're going to be adding a new property called vectors. And then in the constructor method, we're going to be adding a couple new features. We're going to be adding layers, which on default is going to be 4. Angle, which is the angle that's going to alter the fractals, or the like child vectors, I guess. And also the position. And all we have to do is just this dot layer equals layer. This dot angle equals angle. This dot position equals position. We're going to be creating a new method called construct, and it's going to be populating the vectors array with layers, and those layers are going to be arrays of vectors, which we can then draw. And so before we begin, we just want to reset vectors array. And so now we want to fill this dot vectors with layers. That's our filled with vectors. So for let I equal 0, I must be less than this dot layers, I plus plus, and we have to fix this as well because we put layer instead of layers. And then we want to treat the initial layer first and separately because it's a special layer. So if I equals 0, then create a new vector, and it'll be pointing 100 pixels up this dot position. And then this dot vectors dot push an array of this vector. It has to be an array because this is the first layer, so it's the layer array. And then we want to continue, so we don't want to execute the rest of the code. And if it's not the first layer, then we get the previous layer, I minus 1. And we also set the current layer as an empty array, just so we can edit it. So now let's populate the layers. So for let j equals 0, j must be less than previous layer dot length j plus plus. So first let's get the previous vector, which is previous layer j. And then we also want to calculate a new magnitude, which is 3/4 of the vi, or the previous vector that these two vectors are going to be based off of. We also want to calculate a position, which is the previous vector added to its position. And then we create a v1, which is the first vector that branches off. It'll be vi.x, vi.y, also position. And what we want to do is rotate it. We're going to be rotating this by this dot angle, and we'll just set that for negative for now. And then we're going to set the magnitude as the magnitude that we defined earlier. So we're going to multiply it by magnitude. And so this is the first vector. We're going to be doing the same thing for the other one, except we're just going to remove the negative sign. And after that, we just push the two vectors into the layer that they're supposed to be in. So v1, v2, whoops, v1, v2. And so that's it for the construction method. Now let's go to the draw method. And first we want to construct all the vectors. And then we want to loop over all the layers. And then inside the layers, we want to loop over all the vectors. Vector. And what we'll do is we'll draw that vector. So vector.draw. And before we begin, I also just want to set the x and y's to this.position.x or y as a default. So if we don't define it, then there it is. We'll also set this to white. And so now if we go into the index.js, if we define a fractal, and I believe we also forgot one thing, we have to define the vector, new vector. We forgot to import it over here. And so if we define a new fractal, we have layers equals to 5, for example. And then we'll keep the angle the same, but the position will be a new vector at the center of the canvas. So canvas.elements.client width divided by 2, canvas.elements.client height divided by 2. And this is just a canvas class which I set previously. So if you didn't check out my other videos, then you should definitely check that out. There you go. So we have the fractal, and now we shouldn't be defining it inside the main loop. We should be defining it initially. And then what we do is we draw it. And so there you go. That's the fractal right there. If we want, we can decrease the height by 400. It's a bit too much, maybe 300. And then we could add new branches. And there you go. You could see that we have made a fractal.